Hello everyone, welcome to A Clear Perspective. I'm Serene. I wanted to start off with the For the People Act, or the H.R. 1 bill. On Wednesday, former Vice President Mike Pence wrote in the Daily Signal that H.R. 1 serves one goal and one goal only, to give leftists a permanent, unfair, and unconstitutional advantage in our political system. And that is an unconstitutional, reckless, and anti-democratic bill that would erode those foundational principles and could permanently damage our republic. H.R. 1 would further undermine the American people's confidence in the principle of one person, one vote. On Thursday, Representative Mo Brooks told Breitbart News that in sum, the reliability of the trustworthiness of American elections under H.R. 1 would be akin to those in the old Soviet Union or in Cuba or in Venezuela or in North Korea. Sure, you can vote, but your vote doesn't count. He also said H.R. 1 is the worst piece of legislation relating to elections in the history of the United States of America. It does more to undermine our republic than any legislation I have ever seen or heard of, even looking back in the history books. Claudia Tenney, a representative of New York, also echoed the same views. She published an article on The Hill saying, H.R. 1 isn't for the people, it's for the politicians. House Democrats are leveraging legitimate concerns about election integrity to rush this dangerous bill through Congress. It won't make our elections safer. Instead, it will give House Democrats an advantage in future elections by eliminating nearly every institutional guardrail that preserves the sanctity of the ballot box today. Pelosi is opening the floodgates for almost anyone to submit a ballot or even multiple ballots regardless of eligibility. One of the cards played by communism is to create conflicts and provoke social problems out of thin air, and then under the banner of solving the social problems to seize greater power from the people, and then it continues on to create an even greater social problem. Communism never aims to truly solve the problems they proclaimed. Instead, any problem is used as a tool to increase the power of the ruling regime. When the left saw that the American people wanted more fair and transparent elections, they used it as a way to introduce their H.R. 1 bill. The bill seems to help the people, but it actually further dismantles the Constitution and the American electoral system. Brooks said, if you are talking about non-citizens voting in American elections, H.R. 1 is going to make it much easier, because it makes it a criminal offense for a poll worker to deny a non-citizen voting at the polls. That's craziness, but that's what they do with this legislation by tying the hands of our poll workers. Representative Claudia Tenney also wrote, it is clear we need reforms to increase transparency and restore confidence in our elections. But what Democrats are proposing would move us in the wrong direction. The American people are demanding a common-sense framework for election reform that strengthens security without compromising integrity. H.R. 1 is focused on protecting House Democrats, not our sacred democratic principles. I think it's safe to say that if the H.R. 1 bill does get passed, it is going to be massive voter fraud. It would make Democrat majority permanently. As the Republican Brooks said, we don't steal elections, they do. Next, let's talk about schools acquisition. In recent years, the acquisition of schools in Western countries by Chinese companies has increasingly drawn the attention of the media. These companies have been quietly acquiring schools in countries such as the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom, Asian countries such as Singapore and Malaysia, and other countries in South America, the Middle East, and Africa. In a lengthy investigative article published on February 20th, the Daily Mail said that in the United Kingdom alone, Chinese companies already owned 17 schools. It also warned that the CCP virus has had a serious impact on the British economy. Hundreds of independent schools are in financial trouble and are being targeted by Chinese investors. The article revealed that 9 of the 17 schools had new owners who had ties to the highest level of the Chinese Communist Party. Last year, Chinese firms bought 3 private schools. One buyer was Bright Scholar, which bought a number of schools and colleges. Country Garden Group, its parent company, is one of the largest real estate companies in China. At the company's annual conference on January 8th this year, its founder Yang Guoqiang emphasized that being loyal to the party and the country was an important part of the corporate culture of Country Garden. Mo Bin is the president and the CCP secretary of Country Garden. He also publicly stated that he wanted to cultivate staff members into party members into backbone members, and both party and staff members into corporate executives. Bright Scholar also bought CATS colleges. CATS is an international school network with campuses in Boston, Cambridge, London, Canterbury, and Shanghai. It also has 10 international English language schools in countries such as England, the US, and Canada. Chinese companies claim that their acquisition of schools was to capture the lucrative private school market in the US and Europe. But Chinese media reported them as part of the Chinese Communist Party's global strategy. For example, the Chinese companies explicitly state that this is in response to the CCP's One Belt, One Road plan. In 2019, the Central Committee of the CCP released a 15-year education plan. The plan explicitly encourages Chinese firms to grow overseas and to get involved in the research and development of international education standards and the evaluation systems. This sounds similar to what the American left would like to do right now, as they are trying to indoctrinate cancel culture in classrooms. However, Chinese companies have been infiltrating American private schools for a much longer period of time. Bloomberg reported in 2018 that Chinese companies had already bought Bay State College in Boston, Dowling College in New York, Daniel Webster College in New Hampshire, and Chester College in New Hampshire. Bay State College was acquired by Ambo Education Group in November 2017, while Chester College, which closed in 2012, was acquired by Jiahui Education in 2015. Jiahui then converted to Bosch Academy, which became a Chinese boarding school. In addition, the New York Military Academy, where former President Trump graduated, was sold for $16 million in October 2015 to the nonprofit group Research Center on Natural Conservation. This group is backed by a Chinese real estate company, Soufang Holdings. The school was established in 1889. Furthermore, there is a long list of U.S. schools acquired by Chinese investors. Of all these acquisitions of U.S. schools, the most controversial case was Beijing Kaiwen Education Technology's acquisition of Westminster Choir College in New Jersey for $40 million in 2018. Westminster is a prestigious music school founded in the 1920s. It specializes in training singers, music teachers, pianists, conductors, and other music professionals. The school has regular performances with the Philadelphia Orchestra and the New York Philharmonic. In 2018, NPR reported that Westminster alumni and donors filed a lawsuit to stop the sale. Princeton Theological Seminary also filed a lawsuit saying that Kaiwen was actually a subsidiary entirely owned by Bada Chu Holdings Group, which was a Chinese state-owned company. The lawyer said This is the first time that any functioning intact American college is being sold to a foreign government, particularly an authoritarian government. We are going to see that their academic freedom will now be subject to control by government bureaucrats in Beijing. But for the most part, countries like the UK and the US are not opposed to acquisitions from China. Oh, to be blunt, they like the money. Barnaby Lennon, previously headmaster of Harrow Public School and the chairman of the Independent Schools Council, stated the sale of UK private schools to China was a very encouraging development. Lennon said, "They've got the money now, we haven't, and we should be pleased that they regard English schools as something they wish to invest in." In recent years, the ages of Chinese international students have been getting younger. Many Chinese international students start from middle school and even elementary school in the United Kingdom and the United States. This has led many Chinese investors to quietly inject funds and even acquire schools in the UK and the US. However, some of these Chinese investments and acquisitions are part of the Belt and Road world dominance agenda advocated by Xi Jinping. The Daily Mail revealed that Chinese firms acquired schools in the UK to push communist-approved lessons on British students. The article revealed an astonishing fact, quote, "Schools are using educational tools for teaching children a whitewashed view of China." The article mentioned that the communist agenda behind the acquisitions of schools is the same agenda that drove the establishment of Confucius Institutes to infiltrate Western culture. The article pointed to Ray Education Group as an example. On its website, Ray Education details plans to use its British schools to help expand to other countries as part of Chinese President Xi Jinping's Belt and Road strategy to boost China's global economic and political influence. James Hu is the CEO of Ray Education. He is also the secretary of the Communist Party's Hongkou District Committee. He admitted that schools acquired under Ray Education were a part of their global campus plan. Ray Education is not the only communist influence infiltrating British schools. In 2017, China Maple Leaf Educational Systems published a research report on its ability to contribute to the Belt and Road strategy. To exercise the strategy, the company acquired high-end international schools in Singapore and Malaysia and planned to expand its empire throughout Southeast China. On February 23, 2019, the Central Committee of the Communist Party published China's Education Modernization Plan towards 2035. It emphasized the goal to promote the development of Confucius Institutes and classrooms, and speed up the construction of overseas international schools with Chinese characteristics. Under this political environment, Chinese firms are encouraged to acquire foreign schools. The secret for firms to thrive in China is to align with the Communist Party. Any large investments made from China would have some degree of Communist Party influence behind it. It does not matter whether the investor is an individual, a private enterprise, or a state-owned enterprise. Some politicians from the UK are concerned that Communist China is expanding its global influence under the guise of promoting culture. The CCP is making large investments to gain control of Western schools. I am certain that the Communist Party's goal is to spread propaganda and indoctrinate foreign students. The only uncertainty is when the party will execute this agenda and how long it will take to reach that goal. According to Xi, this is part of the unrestricted warfare launched by the Communist Party against the rest of the free world. It started with competitions in the military, economy, and technology, and now it is getting into culture and education. The outcome of the war will determine our future, and it will determine whether we will suffocate under totalitarian rule or enjoy freedom. That's all for today. Hope you have a good weekend. We'll see you next week.